Well, we want to welcome everyone out tonight. We have a really good program to look at and interact with, and about silver and gold. And tonight we have a very special presenter, Chris LeCheminant. I'd like to introduce him. He's a Rich Dad, Poor Dad coach. He's had lots of experience working with financial matters and especially about the financial system. And as you listen to him, you'll really enjoy what he has to say, because he's very interesting, and I've enjoyed the presentations I've heard from him. So without any further delay, I'll turn the time over to you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Kay, and thank you, Richard, for the opportunity to present this information. And really, I have to say that it's really out of passion and enthusiasm for this information, and that I really want other people to know what I've learned. This is not a Rich Dad presentation, of course, but it just so happens that I do that for a living as well. I work as a Rich Dad coach, helping people all over the world. Well, one thing I want to do right away is get the legal part figured out for all of us. So let's take a look at this disclaimer. This presentation is designed to provide general information regarding tonight's subject matter. However, laws and practices vary from state to state, country to country, and are subject to change. Because each factual situation is different, specific advice should be tailored to your particular circumstances. For this reason, you are advised to consult with your own advisors regarding your individual specific situation. For this reason, I specifically disclaim any liability resulting from the use or application of the information provided in this presentation. The information is not intended to serve as legal or investment advice related to individual situations. And quite frankly, that's good news, because if somebody were to just dispense general advice for you on how to use your money and how to prepare for the future, it wouldn't be tailor-made for you, and you do want specific advice and information from a qualified individual who knows you very well. Well, let's get started with this information. For me, it started in 2008. I went to help out at a Rich Dad event called How to Predict the Future, and I was absolutely blown away by the information, particularly about our banking system, information I had never known before, and it changed the way I look at everything. And the reason that's so important is because the world is changing, and if you don't know how to see it, it's very hard to see what's coming. And I liken this a lot to my experiences with flash floods. I'm an outdoor guy. I love to raft. I love to take my Jeep out in the backcountry of southern Utah, and I backpack quite a bit. And I've had the experience of being right up close to, I think now it's 5 flash floods. The pictures here, this happened in 2014. In an area of the Grand Canyon, there's a side canyon called Elves Chasm, and it was really interesting because we had gone up into this little grotto, very narrow grotto, and if you see on the left-hand side, this is that grotto. And let me see if I can use this pointer potentially. Nah, I won't worry about it. Anyway, I was going to try the pointer. But anyway, you can see the size of the people, and actually if you look in the back by the waterfall, there's someone there as well. Well, we played around the water, and I remember thinking it's overcast, we should be careful. Looked at it for a couple of exit strategies just in case. But anyway, we had an enjoyable time there, and then we went back down to the river for lunch. And about 20 minutes, maybe 40 minutes total from the time we left Elves Chasm, I heard what I thought was a jet at first flying over, and I thought, that's a pretty low-flying jet. They're not supposed to do that. Where's the jet? And then I realized what was really going on, and I started yelling to everybody, get to high ground, here it comes. And the right-hand picture is the flash flood that came bursting through just seconds later. If you look at the very top left-hand corner of that slide, you can see 2 people standing there. And if you're to look at the slide on the left-hand side before the flash flood, that rock on the right side of the waterfall was covered. The water was pouring over that large rock. It was huge and quite dramatic. Well, I think we're in some financial times where the flash floods of really financial catastrophe are starting to show up, and I'm seeing the signs, and I want you to help yourself be able to see those signs as well. So what are we talking about when we talk about, financial flash floods and economic collapse and all these scary phrases? Well, you need to know a few things. And the first things it's really important to understand is that all currencies are fiat currencies. And what does that mean? A fiat currency is not backed by anything of value. It's simply backed by the good faith and trust in whoever issues that currency. And I use the word currency. I don't say money. This thing right here, we often refer to that as money. I think of it as currency. It's interesting that it says Federal Reserve note. Well, here we go. Federal Reserve note. It doesn't really say that it's money because it's not. So it's a fiat currency. It's backed by nothing but the good faith and trust in our government. And one of those financial flash flood warnings that I'm seeing is that very issue that more and more people are starting to get less and less confident about the US dollar. And I'm not talking about in the United States, I'm talking about around the world. So it's something we want to be very careful of. An example of this is, well, how about this one? So this sure looks like money, doesn't it? It looks an awful lot like money. And the only thing that we notice about it is, well, there's nothing on the back, but also in the corner it says play money. But really, our governments around the world are a little more stealthy than that, I guess you could say. So let me grab another one that might be interesting to you. This is a gold coin. A nice gold coin. The problem with this coin is it's chocolate. It's not even really money, but it sure looks like money, doesn't it? I also have another one here. Check out this one. What this says on here is parking token, but it kind of looks like a coin. And actually, I see this one does have some value. As long as somebody who wants to use the parking lot where this would work is interested, they're going to go there and they know I have it. They might actually exchange something of value for that parking token. So we tend to say, you know what, that's really not money pretty quickly. But what if I were to put this in your hand? This is a 1 ounce silver maple leaf. If you put it in your hand, you can feel the weight of it. It also says 0.999 fine silver, and it has the Queen of England on the front as well. So this one, inherently, people would say, you know what, I think that's money. You may not know exactly what it's worth, but we know that silver and gold are money. This one's pretty cool. This one I just picked up recently. It's called a Britannia. What I like about this one is the back is very beautiful. Anyway, it's a 1 ounce coin as well, 0.999% pure, and it's from a reputable mint. So we understand that is money and it has value. The cool thing about it for me that I really like, I can go anywhere in the world and almost everybody would say, yep, that's money. That's money. If I were to take this to anywhere in the world, maybe they would, maybe they wouldn't accept it as money. Right now, most would, but I worry sometimes if that's really going to be the case in the future. Well, here's something that's interesting, and the reason we bring up fiat currency most of all is because when countries deal in fiat currencies, one thing we've learned throughout all of history is that fiat currencies eventually go to zero. And we have some recent proof of that. I recently picked this up. This is a $1 Zimbabwe note. Pretty cool. And if you look very closely, it was printed in 2007. 2007. So $1 Zimbabwe note printed in 2007. Pretty cool. Well, in a year's time, actually less than a year's time, here's where that went. This is a $10 trillion Zimbabwe note in less than a year, printed in 2008. And actually, just today, I looked online, and there's 100,000 or 100 trillion Zimbabwe note also printed in 2008. And this is an example of what we call uh, a currency crisis, hyperinflation, and it goes from essentially a currency that people trust in, and then it's almost like an avalanche where it may start a little bit slowly, and then once it takes off, it just picks up speed and crushes everything in its path. That's how a hyperinflation works. Interesting thing, the reason I saw the $100 trillion note today is because I was reading an article that after the 2008 collapse of the Zimbabwe currency, they then reissued currency, the Zimbabwe, what was it, a bond, and the bond was equal to $1. Each $1 of Zimbabwe bond was equal to $1. Well, they're already in that country, they're starting to exchange 1.3 Zimbabwe bond notes for every $1 of U.S. currency. And so, even now, they're already starting to see mistrust in the currency system. And the reason I bring that up is because, quite frankly, we should have a lot of mistrust in the U.S. dollar. And here's why. There's an institution called the Federal Reserve. And one of the big problems that we see is that the Federal Reserve is not a government institution. It's neither federal, and it doesn't have reserves. It's a banking cartel established in 1913, owned by shareholders, mostly the big banks at the time. And even today, no one really knows, because it's very secret, who are the shareholders of the Federal Reserve. But they're in charge of our monetary system now. And essentially, they're the ones that have created this fiat currency. So how does this work on that side of the banking system? Well, they've been able to set something up where they've been able to privatize profits and socialize losses. And one of the best examples of how that works was in 2008, when our banking system was, as it was stated, too big to fail. And so all kinds of money was poured into the banking system to socialize those losses, because it's taxpayer money. And now that they're doing well, do you see a lot of it coming back to us in the form of extra taxes paid out by the banks? No, they're privatizing the profits. So the evidence is there. And this is really set up by the Federal Reserve, a banking cartel. Now, true, the President of the United States has the opportunity to appoint regional presidents, I guess they're called. So there is a little bit of influence there, but for the most part, they just roll along doing their thing. So you need to be a little bit alarmed and afraid of the Federal Reserve. If you really want to understand it well, two things. You could read End the Fed by Ron Paul, or go online and look at some videos about, it's called The Creature from Jekyll Island, all right, by G.W. Griffin, G. Griffin. Anyway, Griffin is the name of this man who wrote the book, The Creature from Jekyll Island. Very interesting history of how it all came about. And the reason it's called Jekyll Island is because that's an island off the coast of Georgia where the first bankers in very secretive meetings met with a congressman to create what we now know as the Federal Reserve. Well, moving on, what does that look like? Let's look what's happened with the Federal Reserve since it was created in 1913. If you look at this graph, which comes from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, so it's the thing that kills me about all of this is the information is out there. They can essentially say, well, it's been out there, we told you so. It's just it's done in such a way that most people never see it. Well, we're starting to see it. I'm helping you see it. So here's what we know. What a $1 back in 1913 bought $1's worth of goods. Now that dollar has lost 95% of its purchasing power. As of 1913, it's now 96% of its purchasing power is gone. And so many, many more dollars are required to buy the same thing. So purchasing power is a key ingredient to understanding what's going on. And we're losing that purchasing power year by year by year. So keep that in mind. Another thing that's so interesting to me is when I look at the history of the Fed and what was going on there. Keynes, interesting guy. A lot of the current economists and many of the people in the Fed actually still follow Keynesian economics. And I thought this quote was pretty interesting. It comes from Felix Samari, and he was referred to, or at least he's the author. There's somebody, I have to remember where I read this for sure, but there was somebody who was called the Raven of Zurich, and he was just very, very, very good at predicting the future. So Keynes is talking to this guy, and he says, Keynes asked me what I was advising my clients. To insulate themselves as much as possible from the coming crisis and to avoid the markets, I replied. Keynes took the opposite view. We will not have any more crashes in our time, he insisted. And where is the crash coming from in this case? The crash will come from the gap between appearances and reality. I've never seen such stormy weather gathering, I said. And so this was back in 1927, this conversation. The big stock market crash and all the problems we had from that 2 years later. And here Keynes is saying there's nothing in the future. Well, if you want to get a little bit of a deja vu, check this out. So Ben Bernanke being questioned by Ron Paul in a congressional hearing on July 18th, 2007. The Federal Reserve is committed to maintaining low and stable inflation, and I'm very confident that we'll be able to do that. Ron Paul says, you're not answering whether or not you anticipate a problem. Ben Bernanke replies, I'm not anticipating a problem like 1979, 1980. This was 2 weeks before the collapse of the Bear Stearns hedge fund, 1 year ahead of the wholesale crumbling of the American financial system in 2008. So he blew it, all right. Now we have Janet Yellen. She's in charge. She's the Fed chairperson. Here's what she said in June, on June 27th. This killed me. Okay. Would I say there will never, ever be another financial crisis? Probably that would be going too far. But I do think we're much safer, and I hope that it will not be in our lifetimes, and I don't believe it will be. Wow, sounds like Keynes all over again, doesn't it? Well, here's something interesting. Just on 26th of September, here's Janet Yellen in a speech delivered to the National Association for Business Economics in Cleveland. Yellen admitted that trends in employment and wage and price pressures have shifted from what central bank forecasters expected. My colleagues and I may have misjudged the strength of the labor market, the degree to which longer run inflation expectations are consistent with our inflation objective, or even the fundamental forces driving inflation, Yellen said according to prepared remarks. She said, key assumptions made by the Fed's baseline forecast could be wrong. Yellen attributed the inaccuracies to a prolonged productivity shutdown, reduced inflation expectations, and other dynamics that have restrained growth and inflation. In other words, she's saying we don't have a clue what's going on here. Okay, and they're in charge of our financial system. So I see very stormy weather ahead. Personally, that's how I'm taking this information and why I'm telling you about this. And you've got to look at it a little bit differently, because again, if you can see the clues that are essentially indicating a financial flash flood is coming, you'll be better prepared for it and hopefully out of the way. So what else are we talking about here? Well, imagine that you're rowing a boat up to an island. Yeah, we're all in this boat and we're looking at the island, and somebody says, well, isn't that interesting? The island is rising. The island is rising. And then, of course, we realize that no, what's happening is the boat is sinking. So what we mean by that when it comes to financial things, we'll often say, wow, prices are rising, or inflation is going up. You know, there's a lot of inflation happening. So what does that mean? Prices rising. Well, what it really means, you need to change the way you think about this. What it's really saying is, no, the dollar's purchasing power is weakening. The boat is sinking. So whenever I hear the Fed saying, we want to target 3% inflation, what that means is they want to target stealing 3% of my purchasing power, stealing 3% of my wealth in the form of this hidden tax we call inflation. And the more you study the Fed and its policies, the more you'll realize that inflation is a key objective of the Fed. Lately, they haven't been able to get it going, but still, the bottom line is they're after your money. They're after your purchasing power, and we've got to find ways to protect ourselves. So what does financial high ground look like? This actually is another experience of a flash flood just, was it 2 years ago? You can see water coming out of one of the canyon walls and pouring into the Escalante River. That's where we were. So we got to high ground, of course, and we were fine. We weren't in danger of the flash flood being on high ground. So what does financial high ground look like? What if the government shuts down the banks and reprograms the ATMs to limit you to $300 a day for gas and groceries? The fact that you might have $100,000 in the bank is irrelevant. Government regulators will say $300 a day is more than enough for gas and groceries until further notice. This is exactly the scenario that played out in the Eurozone in Cyprus in 2013 and in Greece in 2015. Savers should have physical gold as insurance against bank freeze scenarios. This was written by Jim Rickards. So I believe that's exactly true, that the possibility of limitations on how much you can withdraw are very, very real. All it takes is one even slight crisis and that can happen. You could simply look at another reason to have something outside of the banking system in case of a freeze. How about this one? A hurricane comes through and knocks out all the power for days. How are you going to get your money if there's no electricity, if it's stuck in the bank? So having something outside the banking system in times of need is very, very important. Now, to understand where we're going with all this currency stuff that's happening, one thing we know is that there's a cycle that happens in currencies. In this case, a really excellent writing on this is The Guide to Investing in Gold and Silver by Mike Maloney. He's a Rich Dad advisor, or was. Anyway, in this, he identifies the 7-stage currency cycle. He also goes through the whole monetary history, and we learn through that fiat currencies have always failed, always failed. So how does this work? Well, we start with sound money. Sound money is backed by something of value, usually gold. Then the government starts to institute public works and social programs. And the problem with that is that they cost money. And they also have to start building a military, a massive military, in order to protect the wealth that's being created by the country. So in order to, this massive military, it always seems to end up being put to use. And so the military goes to war. What have we seen over the years? The military going to war. Yep, it happens. Then what happens? They have to debase the currency. They don't have enough gold to handle all this military use that's going on and other infrastructure needs, public works, and social programs. This is exactly the reason why the Zimbabwe currency failed. They were funding wars, and it got out of control. And eventually what happens? There's a currency crisis. There's a point where there's no longer trust in the currency. And then eventually it drops to zero. It goes to zero. And gold does an accounting. In other words, to bring back a currency that people will trust again, there has to be a backing of something of value. And it's usually gold. So the question you might ask yourself is, where are we in the cycle? Personally, I believe we're well into the debasing of the currency. What I don't know is when the currency crisis is going to happen, but I want to be ready for that. Now, when I first started learning about this in 2008, my viewpoint, my imagination was, this is coming very quickly. I imagine this car speeding down the road, and I stepped out into traffic, and I see this car flying at me very, very fast. And so for years, 2008, 2009, 2010, 2011, and so on, I'm thinking, when is this coming? And it just took me a couple of years to start to recognize that, you know what? I don't think it's a car flying at me at a high rate of speed. It's a steamroller that's essentially rolling down the road, lumbering down the road and it's coming at me. I just got to get out of the way soon enough. Now, it doesn't mean that I have all day long. I don't know how long I have, but I know the steamroller's coming, so I keep moving out of its way because I don't want to get flattened by a currency crisis. And I do recommend the same to each one of you. How do we get out of the way of this currency crisis that may be coming? I believe it will. And so I'm getting out of the way. So what do? Well, the first thing I recommend to you is get educated. Learn more about this monetary crisis that we're facing or could be coming at us very, very quickly. There's a lot of things going on right now that I'm reading and studying that have me more nervous than I've ever been about the potential of a currency crisis and the resetting of the currency. And so learn about it. These two books, I think, are fantastic to understand it better. And most importantly for me, it helped me understand why precious metals were so important. Now, one of the things a lot of people do is they'll say things like, "Well, I did buy gold, I did buy silver," and what they bought was a paper representation of that. And here's the scary thing about that: banks can sell $10 or more of these contracts for every dollar of physical gold they hold. I've even heard up to 100 times, not just 10, but $100 for every dollar of gold. It's called unallocated storage. If too many customers claimed physical gold all at once, the bank could simply terminate the contract and simply provide the counterparty with cash at the closing price as of the termination date. The customer would get a check at the closing price, but they're not going to get the actual gold. That's the best case, In the worst case, the bank would simply fail and the gold investor would have nothing. So for me, that means I want physical gold. By the way, if you had to guess what's the full information underneath this cartoon, it's only half there. According to the system, your assets are frozen. Haha. All right, but let's move on to physical gold, because if I get paper gold, we often call it, there's a good chance I wouldn't get it. Another point for me about physical gold is who's trying to get gold now? And it's very, very interesting because back in the first round of depression, the bank failures that we had in the U.S., it was really only much of the Western hemisphere that was into buying gold. Western countries were. Now, it's all over the world. If you started to look at how much the government of China is buying, the government of Russia, the government of India, but also how much their individual citizens are buying in physical gold and silver, it's incredible. So I believe the next time there's a run towards the physical gold and silver, it will be really hard to get it because it's a worldwide demand now. So we got to think of that as well. So for me, what's the silver lining? As you know, I like to show real silver because I love silver actually more than gold for a number of reasons. One of them, quite frankly, is it's easier to transact business. If this were a real gold coin and I tried to go buy some groceries or barter with somebody for some items that would sustain me, it'd be hard to get change for an ounce of gold, but it'd be pretty easy to do a transaction in a few silver coins, so I like those. Now, the problem with silver is it takes a lot more silver to equal the value of one gold coin. So one thing you want to learn to do as well is look for off-site storage outside of the banking system. So you don't want to put it in a safe deposit box, because if a bank failure happens, it'll be tied up and frozen in that bank until they sort things out, even though it's not a deposit of the bank. So you want to look for good storage. Fortunately for me, in Salt Lake City where I live, there's Brink storage, and it's awesome. So storing your silver isn't that hard after all if you find a good, reputable storage site. So anyway, I think silver is a great way to go. Now, all of this is really meant to help us outside of the banking system. So if there's bank failures, there's limits on the amount you can withdraw, or there's a continued debasing of the currency. What happens when the currency finally begins to take an accounting? This gold and silver, it will turn into huge amounts of purchasing power. I think it's interesting because we say, well, how much gold or silver should I buy? And it's really not how much we should buy in the form of dollars. Should I buy $100 worth? No, what you want to do is look at it in the form of an ounce of silver is always an ounce of silver. An ounce of gold is always an ounce of gold. How many dollars it takes to buy it is not a gold or silver problem. It's a dollar problem. It means its purchasing power is declining as it takes more dollars to buy that same ounce. And so setting a position is a wonderful thing, okay, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But really, here's the bottom line for each of us. I want to explain this. If you look on one side of the chart, it says impact, and it's either a high impact or a low impact. And then down on the bottom of the chart, it says likelihood of occurrence, and it's either going to be low or it's going to be high. The likelihood of occurrence will be either low or high. So if we say, well, what's the possibility of a financial failure, a currency failure? Well, if it's low, and the likelihood of it happening is low, then if you see in blue, it says never. So I wouldn't even bother with it. If the impact is high and the likelihood of it happening is low, then I'm usually going to do something. How about this one? If the impact is low but the probability is high, sometimes I'll do something about it, but the impact isn't very much, so I don't have to worry about it. But here's the thing for me. The impact of a financial meltdown, of a currency failure, is sky high, in my opinion. The likelihood of occurrence is really how you judge and understand the signs that I'm talking about, and what you do on your own to learn about them. I think the signs are pretty high something's going to happen. So what do I need to do in order to prioritize my prepping for this? See, in red it says always. You always do something about it. And so for me, this preparation to have more gold and silver, have more precious metals as part of my preparation is a big deal. And I hope it is for you as well. So how do we get started? What do we do? Well, the first thing, as I mentioned before, just to reiterate, is you need to get educated. You need to start learning about this. Burying your head in the sand isn't going to do you any good at all. So understand what's going on with our financial institutions, what the Fed is up to, what our government is up to. And when you learn about the Fed not even being a government institution, you say, well, why do they allow it to happen? Well, when the Fed gives government a blank check to do what they want, they're going to let them do that all day long. So what do we see coming in December? Another potential financial flash flood? The debt ceiling was kicked down the road from September to December. They might kick it down the road again. In fact, I don't imagine a time where they don't raise the debt ceiling again and again and again until the rest of the world says, wait a minute, something's up here. If they keep raising the debt ceiling, what good is that? Those dollars, and they might want out. So anyway, financial flash flood warning there. Identify your position. Now this is where you want to identify, well, how much gold and silver in ounces do I want to have to help protect me? And so this is where you start deciding how many ounces would be a good idea. And then start the process of acquiring precious metals. And when you do that, for some of you, you may be thinking, oh my goodness, that's expensive stuff. How am I ever going to do that? Another reason why I like silver. This Canadian maple leaf and this silver Britannia, they both run with shipping and everything that you need to do. It's about $20 an ounce. Everybody can pull off a couple of silver coins a month, really. Everybody can. And so if you're unable to set your position quickly, then start small, but do something. Now, one of the things that has been very interesting for me as I've watched this over the years is Mike Maloney, who wrote the book that I recommended to you. He's a broker dealer, and I bought my silver and gold from him. And then I've also looked at others, and one of the very popular ones is the American Precious Metals Exchange. So I've watched them for years, trying to determine if it's time to get more, is the price low enough for another round. And anyway, one of the things that I've discovered is there's a new company called 7K Metals, and that's my source now. Every time I look at the pricing, when you figure silver is between $18 and $20 an ounce, well, yeah, with 7K it is. With goldandsilver.com and American Precious Metals Exchange, they're about $1 to $1.40 per ounce of silver, per coin, more expensive. So I love this idea of being able to buy wholesale, and I've jumped fully on board with 7K Metals to be able to acquire even more precious metals. Now, what I'd like to do is turn some time over to Kay Cox, because he has more information for you about 7K Metals. Kay, I'll turn it over to you.
Hey, thank you there, Chris. I sure appreciate everything you've shared with us. You help us to recognize the signs and the clues and the need for having precious metals. And it's a powerful tool. It's something for us all to know. I've taken a lot of what Chris has shared with us to heart, and I've purchased that one book, Guide to Investing in Gold and Silver, and by Mike Maloney. And I got it through Amazon, through Audible. And by buying it, I'm also able to share it for free with as an audio book with people that I know. And I'm sharing that with everybody I can, because I want people to be able to learn as much as they can. Let me see. I need to be able to take the screen if I can, and I'll talk a little bit about okay, great. I'll find this presentation here. I want to share kind of a PowerPoint presentation from the 7K Metals company. And I'm going to go through some of these slides fairly quickly, because we want to be able to compress this down to where we're not keeping everybody too long today. But you might ask, why did we start with 7K Metals? And it started back in November of this previous year, and its official launch didn't happen until the end of July. They got things set up really well, and it's been very successful. I became involved with it because I have a good friend that was one of the owners, and he told me this is going to change how things are done in two different industries. And we'll kind of skim through some of this, but it's turned out to be very true. What we want to do is help you understand that precious metals, this is the best source for getting your precious metals. And if people understand the need for it, they're going to be looking for a good place to get their precious metals. They want to get it from a reliable source and at the best price possible. And as Chris mentioned, he has a lot of experience with buying precious metals in the past, and the best price that he's come across is 7K Metals. He was able to check that out, and we'd invite you to do that also. And so with precious metals, there's some really powerful things with if you understand how they've really been valuable in the past, and how much value they're going to have as we go on into the future here. If you take gold, for example, you know that gold back in the 1800s, a 1 ounce gold piece was worth $20 in regular money. Well, you could take either $20 of regular money or a 20 or a 1 ounce gold piece and buy a high-end suit or of a Colt Peacemaker. And so both of them would cost quite a bit of money back in those days, and $20 was a lot of money. Well, these days now, if you take $20, you can't come even close to buying a good custom suit or buying a high-end firearm. They only buy just a portion of it. But if you take a 1 ounce gold piece, that's worth over $1,300 in today's money, would buy you that custom suit or the high-end firearm. And so gold has maintained its value all along. The money, the fiat money, has actually lost its purchasing power over the years, and gold is still a great value for putting your money into that. But so you can have some confidence it's going to maintain its purchasing power. Now, if we take the power of silver, it's very similar. If you were to take back in 1965, a silver dollar, a 1 ounce silver dollar would be worth $1. And with $2,500 worth of silver, or $2,500 worth of just regular dollars, you could buy a 1965 Ford Mustang. Well, today, whether you buy it, if you tried to buy a Ford Mustang with, say, $2,500 worth of cash, it wouldn't even come close to buying that. But if you were to take 2,500 ounces of silver instead, you could actually buy, in today's world, 2 Ford Mustangs, because 2,500 ounces of silver at, say, around $17 to $18 an ounce would be enough to be able to buy 2 Ford Mustangs. So it's maintained its purchasing power where the dollar hasn't. And so having gold and silver as a place to hedge against the losing power of the purchasing power of the dollar is really, really important. And that's one of our messages. We want to help people be able to find that silver and gold at the very lowest price, and that's with 7K Metals. Now, most people don't buy silver because, first of all, they're confused about the price. They don't trust the vendors. Who would you dare buy it on the internet and even trust whether it ever even arrive at your home? Most of these good vendors on the internet are most of them are legitimate, of course, but it might take them time to deliver that. But most people also, there's another reason they don't buy gold and silver, is because they really just don't have the money. I myself had never been a purchaser of precious metals until I got involved with the company. And after I became involved and I understood why it was so important, I started making it important and started purchasing silver. But there's a way the company can help you to obtain money to buy that silver, and we'll explain a little bit about that. Now, the industry, the way the industry works, we're changing this, okay? But if you understand that when silver and gold are mined out of the earth, they're eventually taken and melted down and used in different ways. Well, the U.S. Mint takes that gold and silver, and they mint coins out of it, or bars, or whatever they're making, and they release it to a dealer. And there's only a few dealers in the country that are large enough to be able to work with it directly with the U.S. Mint, to be able to buy on that kind of buying power. And then they sell it in turn to wholesalers. The wholesaler will sell it to a broker. The broker then can sell it to a retailer. Each step along this way, they're marking it up a little bit, and they're making a profit on that transaction. Eventually, that retailer, of course, will sell it to us as the customer. Well, the rules have been changed. Well, the 7K Metals has figured out a way to bypass all that chain of markups to get rid of all those middlemen. And so what they have done is they've come up with a model of having a membership in a group that can buy with large enough volume to be able to bypass those middlemen and be able to get the silver and the gold at a lot lower price than is available to anyone else in the country. And the way they do that is that we buy from the dealer, who then we take and pass that to you at cost. So the membership is a membership of value in that you pay an annual membership, and now you're able to buy the precious metals from one of those authorized dealers in U.S. Mint releases to, and we pay absolutely the same price the company pays for that and their cost, just the cost of getting it to us. And so a powerful discount in being able to buy our gold and silver and be able to buy it more like as if it's wholesale priced. Now, one of the things too is the company grows bigger and we have more volume. Eventually, we will hopefully be able to buy directly from the U.S. Mint, and we're working towards that type of volume now. And then we'll even have an even lower price for our precious metals. Okay, so the cost of a membership in 7K Metals is $250 annually, and it allows you to be able to purchase as much gold and silver at cost as you would like, whether it's 1 coin or 1,000 coins. You're paying the same price per ounce, and then just a small shipping amount is all that we'd have to add on to that. And so the member is a customer being able to buy directly through their 7K membership to get that low price. Now, when that transaction happens, the company does not make any money on the transactions. The only way that the company and the membership makes any money is on the memberships themselves. That's an annual fee. Okay, so there's other benefits by being part of the membership. We can buy specialty coins. The company's looking for good bargains on specialty coins from a lot of the mints around the world, and it's really been interesting. So if you go to one of the websites, our websites, and check that out, you can see some of those coins. Some of these coins are like the panda that comes from the Perth Mint, and they're releasing that, and now this is a numismatic coin which you can purchase at this time. And also they've had the Cougaran from South Africa was one that they released a while back, and its value jumped very quickly after that coin was released. Okay, so when you have a membership, what happens is you can purchase all the precious metals you want at cost, but it creates a tracking center. And if you choose, you can refer people to 7K Metals, and they can purchase a membership for the same price you do and get their precious metals for the same price that you're paying. And when they purchase their metals, you don't make any markup on that, and neither does the company. So that's a membership of value that to them helps them get their precious metals at the lowest price. But as you refer people to become part of the 7K company, what happens is you develop two tracking, or right leg and a left leg, and you start out as a customer, and when you refer people to use the company, this tracking center now starts accumulating points, and once you've attained a certain amount of points, then you're able to have those points translate into a cycled commission, which the company pays directly to you. And this compensation plan is really quite simple. It takes just one page to illustrate it. But what we'll do is we'll go through this just a little bit. You start out, or if you were to sell or not sell, but to refer the membership to two people, one on your right, one on your left. It's in the tracking center, and then as they refer people and you refer people, they're added on to on down in this tracking center basis. They each have tracking centers, and as the points accumulate, then if you get 500 points on your right and 500 points on your left, then the company will generate a $500 check to you. And that's unheard of in networking with people referring a membership like this. It's a model where people are buying product at the lowest price, and all they have to do that is just to pay for that annual membership. Now, if you choose, you can also add more members and cycle more often. And so if you were to cycle twice a week, you would be making $1,000 a week. If you have a few more people that you personally enrolled, you can cycle up to 4 times a week. And that can go on up to 7 times a week and 14 times a week. And so up to $7,000 a week is possible with this, and it's such a powerful model, because it really starts out with sharing it with a couple of people, and you can share it with as many people as you'd like, and they can share it with people, but everyone gets to count those points as they come up through those tracking centers. And so the goal would be to share this with as many people as you can. They don't have to share it with people. They can just be a member, but they still count in the numbers there for you. And what we want to do is try to help people accumulate as many membership as we can to share with those that they know. Now, this illustrates a little bit about those levels and how many people you need on your left and how many people on your right and so forth to qualify for those cycle checks. Now, to accumulate a cycle or points, every time someone enrolls, you get 100 points. That generates 100 points towards the points that you're accumulating. And so in this illustration, it shows 3 people enrolling. That's 300 points. Someone buys a numismatic coin. There's only the only coins that generate any points are the numismatic coin of the month coins, and they're worth 20 points a month. And so in this case, all these points would generate 500 points on the right. If you had 500 points on your left, then you would cycle and make $500. And so the power of this is that people can work with one another, help each other. You have incentive to help those below you cycle as often as they would like, and there you also get to count those points also. Now we have a product of value where I'll skip past a couple of these things, but I want you to know that the coin of the month that they do pay points on is the only coin that they actually mark up, and the coin of the month makes it so that if you do the coin of the month and you to qualify for income, you just need to have a minimum of 20 points a month. You don't have to buy this coin. If you just enroll people, you get 100 points every time you enroll someone. So this coin of the month is a way to ensure too that you're doing at least 20 points a month, which would be the minimum. Okay, the coin of the month is really unique in that it's a mint state numismatic coin. MS70 means that it's being a mint state one, it is perfect without blemish. An MS1 would be a coin that you could hardly recognize. And so being in perfect mint condition, it's truly a collector's type of coin. And the company is giving different options for people to be able to buy those coins in different ways. The Silver Eagle is probably the most popular one at this point, but there's other coins that people could opt to getting if they would like. So the different packages are explained really well on our website, and you never know how much these coins might become worth. A coin, one of those numismatic coins, the Silver Eagle, we're paying $98 for. On the shopping channel, they sell them for $130 all day long. They're one of the greatest buyers of the numismatic coins, and and so they sell a lot of them. Well, people can get them for $98 with us, and if they shop around, they can probably get them for a little cheaper from different places on the internet. But for sure, if a person enrolls to do that coin of the month, they will be getting one. I know the purchase price every time. Okay, different coins of the month will maybe become worth more depending on how old they are. A coin that was purchased back in 2012, MS70 Silver Eagle, is now worth about $150. A 1996 Silver Eagle is worth over $6,000, and a 1999 one is worth over $19,000. It just depends on how many there were that year stamped and how many were in MS70, and some years are going to be worth quite a bit more than others. Now, the thing is that's really powerful about this is we don't know how much a 1917 Silver Eagle is going to be worth. MS70 Silver Eagle will be worth next year or the year after. But on the average, some will be worth quite a bit more than others. Now, if a person had bought one of these MS70 numismatic coins, Silver Eagle, one a month for the last 30 years, a person would have spent almost $40,000 on numismatic coins. And how much would that be worth today? It'd be a question you might ask. Well, we know from the statistics and that would be worth over $1 million. I think what I've heard them say is that it would be worth over $1.2 million. So a $40,000 investment over a period of time, in this case, would have created this. Now, we don't know how much our Silver Eagles today are going to be worth in the future, but by investing a little bit in those, that to some people would be a good way to make sure that they're at least saving something. Now, I personally would like to invest more in just regular bullion, Silver Eagle bullion. That's a lot cheaper, be able to use it better maybe in case of economic collapse. But I am also buying these, and I enjoy seeing what one's going to come each week. Now we'll skip past some of these other things that are at this point. Some other time we'll be able to cover them. But would invite you to really consider what a 7K membership would do for you. And if you've not had a chance to enroll, we encourage you to go to the person that invited you to this presentation tonight to further talk about the benefits of a membership, and we'd love to help you get started. We'd love to be able to work with you. I've not done this presentation before this way, but I survived it, and I sure enjoyed Chris's remarks tonight, and Richard and Chris. I appreciate working with both of you and all the other people that are on this conference tonight, and like to turn the time back over to you, Richard, if you'd like to take it.
Okay, yeah, that's a big thanks to Chris and Kay. Great job on the presentation. We're recording this, and we'll put it up for others to be able to see, for those that aren't able to make it. Hopefully, I think you can tell from Chris, from Kay, from myself, the passion that we have to help people in the precious metals, to whether it's to buy just a hedge against inflation or to prepare for a worst case scenario. Either way, precious metals serves its purpose. So thanks to Chris and to Kay. If anybody has any questions, you can get a hold of one of us, get a hold of the person that told you about the meeting tonight. And we'll be doing these again in the near future. We'll announce when they're going to be. Encourage you to invite your prospects. People might be interested in silver and gold and in a really good, lucrative income opportunity. So thanks, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your evening.
Hey, thank you there, Richard. It's good to see you too, Dave.